Do you wear your seatbelt when you're in a car? Well, apparently most of you claim that you do, but apparently not all of you actually do, and that is what is resulting in a rather high number of fatalities and serious injuries. I'll tell you everything right after this.
A brown car guy. Brown car guy.
So it turns out, and this is surprising here in the UK, because you know we've had seatbelt laws since forever really, and even as a kid I remember even when we didn't have the law we had campaigns and stuff like that to encourage people to wear seatbelts. So and even the seatbelt has to be worn in the entire car, just in case there's confusion here. People think that it's just the front seats. It's not. You have to wear a seatbelt where a seatbelt is available. That is the law. And yet somehow what we have found, or what is actually research by AXA UK and Brake, what they have found is that 1 in 4 crash death victims in the UK are because they weren't wearing a seatbelt, which is quite, like I said, that's quite extraordinary to learn that. The figure rises to 41% for crashes that occur at night. Wowzers. So was that 1 in 4? There's 25%, and then it rises to 41% at night. What they found, this was in 2023, 1,766 people died on UK roads, and many more received serious life-changing injuries. The research suggests that 96% of drivers who surveyed, as I said, you all claim that yes, you wear seatbelts. So 96% of drivers surveyed said, yeah, we wear seatbelts. But it turns out that that's surely not possible. Some of those people are lying, because clearly if that number of people are dying because they're not wearing seatbelts, then the truth is in there somewhere. The study found that although drivers appear to have a good understanding of the safety benefits of seatbelts and child seats for babies and children, there is a risk of lack of knowledge about some of the other passive safety features in their cars. These include seatbelt reminders and pre-tensioners, head restraints and load limiters, which are designed to reduce the risk of injury and death in the event of a crash. So seatbelt pre-tensioners, as you may have seen, when you set off in a car, your passenger jumps in and you set off before they put the seatbelt on, and sometimes they can't move the seatbelt. That's because it's already locked in place because it's detected movement. This is very important because this is what it does. This is how it pulls you and keeps you in place. And headrests, the other thing is about headrests. People don't understand that headrests need to be adjusted properly. So they should be, ideally, if you can, you don't need to have your head touching the headrest all the time as you're driving, but you need to have the headrest about here at the back of your head, just about here. So this is for whiplash and stuff like that. So that's where it will cushion your movement of your head in the event of an impact. So that's quite important. So what they're doing, AXA UK and Brake are challenging the government to implement the EU General Safety Regulation, which stipulates that seatbelt reminders should be made mandatory for all seats in all vehicles. Especially important for the 10% of drivers who say that they occasionally forget to buckle up. Naughty, naughty, naughty. There's also apparently an archaic law which still exists, and this actually provides an exemption for taxi drivers. And the law was last reviewed in 1993. And I suppose it kind of made sense, because at the time what they found was that taxi drivers would get mugged, and one of the ways that the criminals would do this would be to restrain them with their own seatbelt. So, restricting their movement and then stealing their cash. Of course, things are different in taxis now, because now, of course, you have, the glass protection, the cover there that separates the passengers from the taxi driver. So they make a point that, this needs to be looked at again. Maybe it's time to revise that law. So, even while traveling in a taxi, around a fifth of those surveyed, that's 21%, said that they don't always wear a seatbelt, even though it is a legal requirement, as I said earlier, to wear a seatbelt if a seatbelt is available. So, hope you're enjoying this video. If you are, make sure you hit that like button, comment, share, tell the world. So, what do I mean by if a seatbelt is available? Why would it not be available? Well, actually, some classic cars and some older cars, in the rear, they may not have a seatbelt. And some vintage cars may not have a belt in the front. Famously, the cars that the likes of Sterling Moss raced didn't have any kind of belt. You know, and his argument was always, well, you know, if I'm in a crash, it's often safer to fall out of the car. But in the real world, seatbelt, seatbelt, seatbelt. You don't want to fall out of a car, not on a public road, because that would be far, far worse. And if you've been on YouTube, then you would have seen videos of, particularly related to people driving in the Middle East, for example, where they're sort of jumping up and down dunes and desert roads and stuff like that. And sometimes they're two-wheeling cars and what have you. And there are some pretty, I'm not urging you to look them up, but they are in existence, they are out there. Some pretty horrific videos where, you know, the car flips or turns or rolls over and the person literally is ejected from the car and thrown quite hard, and in some cases thrown directly into the path of their own car as it's rolling. The consequences don't bear thinking about. So yeah, always wear a seatbelt. There's no reason not to wear it, front and back. Don't forget, in the back as well. So this is not, I'm not reading from here now, this is just stuff that I know, and I'm telling you that, for example, a lot of people think, well, I'm in the back of the car, it's fine, you know, it's not that much of an issue. But if you think about the force at which you are traveling forward in an impact, if you're sitting in the back and you're not wearing a seatbelt, the force at which you're traveling forward, the force at which you then hit the seat in front of you, if there happens to be a passenger or the driver in that front seat, you immediately put them at risk, because then you have pushed them forward into the dashboard or the steering wheel or whatever. So almost negating the effects or the positive effects of a seatbelt, because you've countered it. So, and also this thing about, you know, I still see it even now, you know, people carrying their children in the cars, and you speak to them and they're like, it's okay, I'm holding on to the baby. I just go, no, that's not going to work. It's a light baby, I'll hold on to it, nothing will happen. It's like, no, you do not have the strength or the reflexes to cope with restraining that child should, God forbid, the worst happen. You think about the fact that deceleration forces, you're talking about an impact of maybe 3G, 5G plus. You think about the weight, you know, of, what does a baby weigh? I don't know, what does a baby weigh? Tell me, it's a long time since I had mine. Let's say 5 kilograms, right? So if you talk about, let's say 3G, you talk about 5 times 3, that's 15 kilograms. That's suddenly the weight of, you know, one of those well-packed roll-on suitcases that you suddenly have to hold on to. Yeah, when you work it out in those terms, you find that actually, yeah, it's not as simple as you might think. So work-related road collisions estimated to contribute to 1/3 of all UK road deaths and 1/5 of serious injuries, the report says, and calls for the expansion of projects such as the National Highways Operation Ping, which uses data captured from cameras on strategic road network to address non-seat. So basically, these are the cameras that, for example, are up here, that are traffic lights and that are for ULEDs and stuff like that. And they are sharp enough to see inside the car and to see, you know, whether or not you're wearing a seatbelt. So what they're saying is that, you know, more fines can easily be issued by doing that. So anyway, to conclude, over the last 5 years, 1/4 of car drivers and passengers who died in road crashes on the roads in Britain weren't wearing a seatbelt. From 2018 to 2022, 3,000 car occupants have died, and 44,000 have suffered serious injuries because of not wearing a seatbelt. It's reasonable to assume, therefore, that during this time period, more than 11,000 people may perhaps have been able to protect themselves against traumatic brain injuries, neck and spinal injuries, and damage to internal organs. Seatbelts are still one of the simplest and most effective ways to protect ourselves when traveling by car. So, belt up. Belt up is the message. It's just not worth taking a chance. And I know that even in, like, you know, some people, they don't like to wear seatbelts and they deliberately get into the back because they're like, well, we'll just get in the back, it'll be fine. But, you know, as a driver of the car, it's your responsibility. So I would always urge you, I know you can't force people to do what they don't want to do, but keep in mind though, ultimately you will be held responsible if there is a fine or whatever. But, you know, for God's sakes, people, stay safe, put your seatbelts on, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. Shout out time, guys. Thank you so much. Hey, if you enjoy my content, why not get involved? Buy me a coffee. You can do that at either of these links. Or if you're watching on YouTube, buy me a thanks or take out a membership. It all helps. It really does. Check this out, guys. It's my book. It's my first novel, and it's written for car fans like you. It's a fun political action thriller. It's full of cool cars and spectacular action. Get your copy now at Amazon.com.